Helps to have audio turned on. Good evening, everybody. My name is Aaron Yates. I'm the host of Kerrville United Live. This evening, we're kicking off a series of interviews with some of the candidates that are going to be running for political office here locally in Kerrville and in Kerr County. So tonight, in a few minutes, we're going to have a challenger for Commissioner Precinct 1 for Kerr County, Mr. Konrad Wert. He'll be with us in just a few minutes. Before I welcome Konrad to the show, I want to give just a little bit of background about this race and this election. As a reminder, the November general election, we are 77 days away right now from the November 3rd general election. Early voting, though, begins on October the 13th. And as those days approach, we're going to have more information out to you guys about voting dates and times and locations. We've already posted that in a recent story on Kerrville United that you can check out to find out kind of the mechanics of the ballot, because this time we have City of Kerrville races on the same ballot as the November general election races, which is new for Kerrville this year. So be on the lookout for that. What else is on the ballot this fall? Well, there's quite a bit. Of course, at the top of the ballot, there's a presidential election this year. But in addition to that race, there are federal, state, and local races on the ballot, some of which are opposed, some of which are unopposed. And like I mentioned, if you live in the city of Kerrville, you'll get to vote for mayor, place 3, and place 4 on city council. So needless to say, there's a lot of important stuff on the ballot, a lot of research that people might want to do before they go and cast a vote. We're here to help you with some of that. And one of the ways we want to do that is to introduce you to some of the local candidates as they'll agree to appear on our show. So we hope to be bringing you several of those as we get a little bit closer. To the specifics of today's show, as most of you know, Kerr County Commissioners Court, that's the body of elected officials. There are 5 members on Commissioners Court, 4 commissioners and 1 county judge. The judge is elected at large from the county and serves the entire county, whereas each commissioner has their own geographic precinct that they are elected from and for which they serve. So there's commissioners 1, 2, 3, and 4. Matter of fact, we've got a graphic to show you who those guys are. So, of course, there's Harley Ballou in Precinct 1, Tom Mosier, Precinct 2, Rob Kelly is the county judge, Jonathan Lett serves in Precinct 3, and Mr. Harris serves in Precinct 4. So each of those serve in geographic districts, and here is a graphic of those districts. They look funny, partly because they are trying to divide up roughly equal numbers of people in each of those districts based on the census information. So Precinct 1 is the purple one there, kind of a skinny one that runs from north to south there in Kerr County. And then, of course, Precinct 2, 3, and 4, 4 being the biggest geographic precinct in the county. I wanted to show you, now that you've seen that, we're going to zoom in a little bit on Precinct 1, which we're going to be discussing today. So this is a map that shows just Precinct 1. And of course, here's Kerrville. That little star is the Kerrville United headquarters where we're broadcasting from tonight. It is located in Precinct 1. So it stretches from the Kerr County line up here to the north and all the way down to the Kerr County line with Bandera County here to the south, and includes a whole lot of Kerrville South, what we old-timers like to call Kerrville South, Upper Turtle Creek Road, Camino Real, Ranchero Road, a lot of those areas. It includes within the city limits some areas here, like this is the mall here, and this is the hospital campus. And then it kind of necks down and crosses the river here near the 1011 Bistro, and includes a whole lot of western Kerrville. A lot of these neighborhoods in this central west, west central city area. And then at Interstate 10, it broadens out and covers a big swath, basically all the way from Highway 16 towards Fredericksburg, all the way to Goat Creek Road here on the west. So that gives you a little idea of the amount of land, the amount of district in Precinct 1, and the number of people that live there. There are quite a few people there. Let's see if we can't get back. So just a little bit of history about this place, this Precinct 1, and the people who've served there. A man named Buster Baldwin was Precinct 1 representative for, a couple of decades, I guess. And he announced his retirement and retired in 2016. There was a 5-man race, I think, in the Republican primary to replace him in 2016. And 2 of the contenders made it to the runoff. That was Harley Ballou and Dr. Bill Rector. And Harley Ballou narrowly defeated Rector in that race. And then Harley ran unopposed in the general election that November. Began serving January 2017, and so he's up for his first re-election this year. Now in the primary, the Republican primary, Ballou did not have an opponent. So he went unopposed through the Republican primary. And then typically that's the end of competitive races in Kerr County, because we don't have a lot of Democrat challengers. We don't have a lot of third-party candidates that run for these local positions. So for a lot of these gentlemen, if they make it through the primary, they've effectively won the race that they're hoping to win. And then just a little bit of background of Ballew. As you remember, if you've read our website and followed our show, we published a series of articles. The first time we started covering Commissioner's Court was actually last November, around the animal services debacle, really, that the Commissioner's Court addressed back in November of 2019. Then we stayed on Commissioner's Court and covered more of that political body. And then earlier this year, we published a series of articles about some of the things that Mr. Ballew had to say on his radio show, which is on the Hill Country Patriot, part of the Ranch Radio Group. If you haven't seen those or need to refresh your memory, those are still posted on Kerrville United, along with some audio clips directly from his show. He had some divisive commentary there. It sparked a petition to censure Mr. Ballew, and hundreds of signatures, I believe just shy maybe of 1,000 signatures last time that I checked. And then that leads us to today. So this week, it just launched in the Kerrville Daily Times, and it's been online on his webpage and on his Facebook page. Mr. Konrad Wert entered the race as a write-in candidate for Commissioner Precinct 1. So with that introduction out of the way, I'm going to ask Konrad to join us here. Can you hear us okay, Konrad? Are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, Aaron. Good to see you.
Good. Thanks for being with us today. I appreciate you joining the show. First off, just did I get that narrative correct? You've been following it and researching it pretty closely. Is that kind of the history as you understand it? And did I get anything wrong?
No, I think that's spot on. I know our presence in this is very new. We have a new face here in Kerr County. But like many residents, I would tune in and I would hear some of the information and the rhetoric that was being used on the air. As a father and as a school teacher, I felt compelled to say, well, we have to speak up. We have to speak up and stand up when divisive language is being used like that. So that's ultimately why we felt we had to get involved, ultimately.
So that you probably just answered my first question, but is that how you would describe the reasons for your running? What are the reasons that you have for running for this office?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I think, we as residents, we're the constituency. So we're really the overseers of a commissioner's court. We're the ones that need to set the expectation and share our level of need, focused need in the local area. And when you start to hear this type of communication being used in a private avenue and where it bleeds over to an elected official's responsibilities, to me, that's a very unethical to be at. I think our opponent, Mr. Ballew, can excel in any way he would like as a radio announcer. That's his conviction, and that's clearly his talent to incite and to entertain. But when someone takes on the role of an elected official, I think those responsibilities drastically change, Aaron. I think we have to take it upon us as elected officials of a higher standard, truly. We have to understand that we represent the broad, diverse community that lives within our precinct. So when I was privy to that information, as I said, that was very shocking. I was very surprised. And then the next approach was to simply call as a constituent. I'm doing my job as a resident in Precinct 1, and Commissioner Ballew answered the phone, and we talked, and it got slightly heated. So it was clear that this was not going to be a really conducive conversation over the phone, so I invited him out to coffee. And we scheduled our times to meet. This is not a dig, but Harley was late. He was late for about an hour, and I had to call the court to find out if he's available, and we were able to connect and make a connection. I'm sure he might have been busy. I know he has a lot of responsibilities. And we did meet, and the conversation was cordial, but it was clear, just based on our viewpoints, based on our experiences, we have very, very different understandings of what the role is as a county commissioner. And fundamentally, even when you look at the information online presented from the state, the roles of a county commissioner are to truly represent his constituents in an objective, unbiased manner. And I think the biggest challenge with this duality of a radio show host and a county commissioner, that conflicts. It conflicts far too often because we clearly know where his perceptions lie. And I would not say they're objective. They're rooted in a view that at times brings out prejudice and discriminates with words, discriminates with rhetoric. And I don't think that's the role of what elected officials should be doing here in Kerr County.
So while we're on that subject, the article that came out in the Daily Times just today did describe an interaction that you had at Commissioner's Court with Mr. Blue and the other commissioners there. Do you want to tell us in your words kind of what happened there, what transpired, and what you were asking them to address and how that went?
Sure. And this has been an interesting bit of information. And I encourage, all our neighbors, all our residents and friends and family here in Precinct 1 to research, show initiative, realize that it's your tax dollars that fund gentlemen such as Harley Blue into office. The county commissioner's seat here in Kerr County, their salary that's allotted is $62,000. And that's not an exaggeration, we verify. And so we have 4 county commissioners. So we're roughly looking around $245,000 to $250,000 of expenditures in our county budget. And what's just mind-blowing is that there's no mandate, there's no statute at the state level to say how many hours are required for county commissioners. It doesn't say 40 hours a week, it doesn't say 20 hours a week, it doesn't say 3 hours a week. If anything, it simply stipulates how many hours of training they need a year, which is roughly 18 or 19, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, then the duties, the ethical duties that you would have in court of simply attending. To me, as a father, and specifically as a school teacher, and I'll speak just for myself, in no way do I want to say I represent all school teachers in Kerr County or all school teachers in the state of Texas. Clearly not. I'm simply who I am. My opinion as a school teacher who works anywhere from 45 to 55 hours a week, and is thankful for that position and thankful for that salary and the hard work that we provide for the community as public servants, as educators. I demand much more from my county commissioner. If their salary is $62,000 a year, that's a conundrum that we have to look at our county budget when Judge Kelly, to his credit, has been vigorously trying to balance that budget from what was appearing to be a $2.7 million deficit to something much better. They're still in the process of passing that budget. When I brought those concerns up, and I try to articulate in a loving way, I try to articulate in a way that's not going to put someone on the defensive, but sadly, Aaron, when we ask hard questions, and folks may not be ready for those hard questions, it does put them on the defensive. And I empathize with that, but it's still our job as constituents to ask these hard questions. And so in short, it was not appreciated. And there was a little bit of rhetoric going back and forth, and clearly Judge Kelly had to end the discussion and move on. The sad part of it, and I'll be brief, I'm sorry I'm being a little long-winded. The sad part was then, just for kicks, I tuned into Harley's radio show the next morning, and sure enough, he felt as a county commissioner he should use his outlet as a radio host to talk about there was this crazy teacher that was yelling at me, accusing of me working part-time. That fundamentally is ethically wrong because I'm his constituent. He represents me. Part of his salary, $62,000, part of his commitment of being an elected official is one that remains objective and mediates those types of conflicts with constituents, not harasses them, if you will, on the air. That's inappropriate in my opinion.
Have you heard anything from him or any of the other commissioners since that interaction?
No. Nor have I reached out at this point, and that's not meant in a hostile way, Aaron. That's simply saying at this point, the next step, and this is a very small window we should share with those that are tuning in, is that the process of this decision as a father with 2 children and of course my wife Jenny, this is a family decision when you jump into this mix. And it can be very heated, and family are always watching your back and hoping that everything will go well, but they have concerns, of course, with what may come from this campaign, and they were very hesitant initially to support, and I understand that. They don't want anyone to talk bad about Dad. They don't want any type of harassment to occur. So we had to take our time. We had to take our time and do what was best for our family, all the while still feeling that these convictions are real. We have to stand up to bullish behavior from elected officials. Elected officials here in Kerr County should be focused on county issues. They should not be focused on national political objectives that continue to divide us as residents and neighbors. They should be focusing on expenditures from our jail. They should be looking at how to properly fund our volunteer fire departments.
Why don't we talk about some of those specific issues? Tell us some of the issues that you are concerned about or passionate about that the Commissioner's Court is handling right now. You mentioned the budget. We can talk about the volunteer fire departments, the jail.
Sure.
Just what are some of the big issues for you in this campaign?
Well, I mean, ultimately, it needs to be addressed if we are allotting $245,000 to $250,000 in salaries for county commissioners. Right now, that's just an expenditure because there's no data or validity to the full-time effort that's going on. And I don't mean that as an attack. I simply am looking at the data. School teachers were driven by data, Aaron. And the ends don't justify the means at this point. But when when tuning in to the Commissioner's Court on Mondays and you see the volunteer fire chiefs that come in, they speak about the funding struggles that they're having, where they're saying online and it's being recorded that we don't have enough reserve funds to simply test our equipment. And there's references of neglect, possibly because volunteer firefighters could possibly suffer injury because we're not allotting enough budget for that. An example would be I would like to see county commissioners, when we're faced in these economic restrictions due to COVID, and volunteer fire departments are saying, hey, we weren't able to fundraise. We lost $40,000 in fundraising. I would hope, or I could say myself, if I become elected as a county commissioner in Precinct 1, that we're going down to the fire department and we're collaborating with some creative ideas for fundraising. To me, that's where that $62,000 is justified, being proactive with our decision-making in our efforts. So that's a very specific issue that weighed on my heart because these gentlemen are volunteers. They're simply volunteering to do what's best for our county. So yes, to that extent.
And a lot of people that live in the city limits of Kerrville may not realize how important volunteer fire departments are to those that live outside in the rural areas. So do you have any insight into that? What would you say to the citizen of Kerrville who says, well, we have the Kerrville Fire Department. Why is this an issue that concerns me if I live in the city and not out in the county?
Because I would say that's the responsibility we have as friends and neighbors. I think that's the foundation of what small towns. I grew up in a small town, born in Immokalee, Florida, down in Southwest Florida, all the way down just above the Everglades, and a little town called Lehigh Acres, Florida. And they've changed drastically, of course. But small town community in rural Texas, and we are a small town community in rural Texas, its livelihood is how we can respect one another and work with one another when there's an emergency or a crisis. It's very sad to hear if we in the city limits are not concerned with how our friends are doing just a little past Ranchero Road. My mother-in-law lives out there in the county. It's my responsibility as a neighbor to care about that well-being. Why? No, not on a political agenda, but the same principle that we say time and time again. It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do to care about one another's well-being, especially in a time of a pandemic, especially in a time where nationally we're so quick to argue and we're so quick to demean one another. So those are the lessons, Aaron, I teach my children. I have two sons, a 12-year-old Jonah and a 9-year-old Kai. Those are the foundations which we teach here in the home. As a school teacher, building empathy and active listening and mediating conflict is our entire premise. It's our whole foundation and methodology of why we are school teachers as well. So that would be my response to that, Aaron.
Mm-hmm. One of the proposed solutions to the fire department issue is to establish new taxing districts, emergency services districts, one for each of the different volunteer fire departments, and those residents that live within that district would pay taxes to fund the fire department. Is that a solution that has legs, or how do you see that?
Well, I know out of the volunteer fire departments that we do have, if I'm not mistaken, 2 have already established that.
Correct.
And when I tuned in to the Commissioner's Court, at least the opinion from what I've heard of Judge Kelly is that the volunteer fire departments do like to be very much independent. They might struggle with the regulations that then are put into place. But with that being said, it might be a larger budget that they could utilize and then be better prepared. I think the struggle that a lot of us as residents, whether we're in the city or the county, face is economically, we're all pinching our pennies. Many of us are either going week to week, month to month. The revenue stream has very much slowed down. And so then we talk about these services, this infrastructure that we have to continue to fund. The fear of taxes being raised, even in a small increment, is very daunting for a lot of hardworking families. I know that for a fact because I work with those hardworking families here in the area high school. So then I think with that being the case, all the more reason to have our county commissioners being proactive, doing whatever they can with the virtue of that $62,000 salary that's allotted to them to go above and beyond to collaborate with programs like our volunteer fire departments. That may sound like an easy solution, Aaron, but I don't know why that's not happening. And if it is happening, please, oh please, county commissioners, be transparent. Be completely transparent with your actions because that's good for the county. That builds trust from your constituents, specifically myself here in Precinct 1. I would love to hear of those successes and applaud those successes. But as of yet, Aaron, I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that being shared on Monday morning meetings.
There's been some talk about some of the veteran services also being cut from the budget. Can you tell us what you know about that and your opinion on that issue?
Sure. Well, I did call up for the services at this point. They're not staffed in the office. And so I did leave a message because I simply wanted to understand what did that mean. And I didn't gather a lot of information from the commissioners' meetings in terms of saying, were they relying on a reservist budget? And to what extent were those restrictions, are they significant in hurting our veterans at this time? And I'm truly unaware. But goodness gracious, when we think of the Veterans Hospital and we think of the veterans within our community, of course, we want to say that we're going to prioritize their services. And those are things, when you start asking those types of questions, a teacher's brain is always looking for solutions because we're faced with the daunting task of using limited resources, not because of the district, because of the state's allocation, and create an empowering intervention for a variety of student bodies. Right, that's a teacher's brain. So transcend that to a county commissioner. When we think of Veterans Affairs, I want to learn more about what are we doing with mentoring programs? What are we doing with significant volunteer programs? What are we doing to empower our community that sometimes feels very isolated or shut in by building bridges with Veterans Affairs? I know services do exist, but to the extent that we're having leadership from county commissioners, why can't that be a part of the role? I mean, I understand a county commissioner's role is about infrastructure, making sure that our roads are cared for, our bridges are cared for, states of emergency, we're having the appropriate responses, working with stock show, county budgets, of course, all of these affairs. But why can't we go above and beyond? Especially, Aaron, when $62,000 is allotted for that salary. That, to me, it's not about the money, yet it is about the expectation. That's an expectation that is worth $62,000. So that's my best response there. And obviously, we need to learn more on how to best serve our veterans here in Kerr County.
Shift gears just a little bit. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of some of the things that you've done that maybe help prepare you for an executive position like this one?
Sure. I appreciate it. I like the question because I like talking about education. So I was involved in nonprofit service work and volunteer work from a very early age. My background is from the Mennonite church background originally. My mother and father came from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and were sent down from the church to Immokalee, Florida, which is a prominent migrant community. And their dad was both a pastor and a school teacher, and mom was a nurse working in the free clinic. They would work in the fields with the migrant community as well for health services and education. And that's a very interesting denomination. It's one that's built on service and simplicity, and with the intent that we are here to be compassionate and lift one another up, not tear one another down. Now, I found my own journey, of course, in faith, one that feels very committed to my family and myself. But those principles are very much the same. And as I graduated high school, I found a calling to volunteer. So I started my first teaching position at a nonprofit called For Love of Children up in Washington, D.C. when I was 19. You don't have to be licensed when you work at nonprofits that need a lot of help. And it was a very clear picture of what real trials are in the world for young people that were awarded to the District of Columbia and facing gang violence. And I had the bug. When you find the joy of serving one another, when you find the joy of advocating for one another, you want to keep doing it because it's empowering. It feels right. And you see the rewards in people that sometimes feel marginalized being lifted up, regardless of their ethnicity or their background. They feel lifted up when you can be humble and serve with the truest intent. That brought me over to Oakland, California, where I continued that type of service. Did some low-income housing development work similar to, say, Habitat for Humanity, but at a smaller scale, called Mustard Seed in Oakland, California. And I continued my degree. I finished my degree at Eastern Mennonite University in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And the focus there was a general liberal arts degree. However, the focus was peace and justice studies, mediation, conflict resolution, with too many minors to count. And I continued that path. That's the calling I have, to say I can be a person of change for the better, whether it's in a nonprofit sector or whether it's in a public education program. And so I've been teaching here in Texas for 13 years. It's going on my 13th year. And we started this whole cycle when we moved down to raise our children. That started at a spring contract semester at Hal Peterson, where I made dear friends that still exist today, like Coach Pfeiffer. Cliff is a good buddy. We like to play the blues together. And now I did the Hill Country Loop. I went from Hal Peterson down to Hill Country Elementary in Pipe Creek, over to Bernie ISD at Currington Elementary and Farber Elementary, and now going on my third year back here in Kerrville ISD at Tybee High School. If you love education and you understand the principles of why it's a passionate trade, you don't want to stop doing it. It's something that just hooks into you. It's almost like farming. You got to do it. You got to wake up early. You got to go to work, and you have to empower young people because it's the right thing to do. And lo and behold, some wonderful things. And stop me, because I can get long-winded when we talk about teaching, Aaron, sincerely.
No, I was going to ask you how the teaching intersected, and hopefully, I think you're getting to it, but tell about the current endeavor that you have with Big Seed here locally.
Yes. So one of the trades I've balanced as a father and a school teacher, because you have to be resourceful. You have to understand how to work a budget. When we talk about the roles of a county commissioner, a school teacher in Texas raising a family of 4 has to understand a budget. And you pinch your pennies and you save and you work twice as hard to ensure that your family's taken care of. So I am a musician on the side. You can see some of the instruments in the back, and that's something that sustained us. Well, the administration team and some of the teachers at Tybee knew that as we were moving back here to Kerrville. And lo and behold, they said, "Mr. Wert, will you please try to create some type of program here at the high school?" And I was a little tentative because, Texas school teachers, we want to walk the line. We want to ensure that the district and the families know that our number one priority is the student. There is no distraction. It is the student that is the priority. And it is. In my life, it is. So I was very surprised that they said, yes, bring music to the halls of Tybee High in regard to fiddles and banjos and guitars and songwriting. And sure enough, we did. And lo and behold, the nonprofit Big Seed was born. With contributions from area business owners and specialists with KISD and in Kerrville. And we are now a legal nonprofit. You can find us throughout the community. You can see us on www.bigseed.org. And our whole premise is to work with young people anywhere from 3 to 23 and empowering their abilities, empowering their talents, because the arts are an incredible thing that enrich our lives. They really are. And it's been a beautiful thing. I can't tell you enough. It's been an amazing thing to build these relationships with young people. You've seen some of them, Aaron. Elijah Flores, a local kiddo that just excels with his guitar abilities. Phoenix Miller, a young lady who is just incredibly talented with her vocals, and we're trying to help her get to that next level in her young career.
And our viewers will remember both of those from our Sunday night benefit concert that we had here.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Very good. So tell us, running as a write-in candidate, which you are, is definitely an uphill battle, and so it's not easy. Tell us just how you plan on campaigning, how you plan on getting the message out, what kind of campaign do you plan on running, and just kind of how is it going to go as a write-in candidate?
Sure. Yes, you're exactly right. I'm glad you bring that up because some folks may be unfamiliar. What is a write-in candidate? So literally, upon early voting and final day of voting, November 3rd, when you get to your ballot and you see County Commissioner Precinct 1, of course, Harley Blue's name will be there, and then you'll see this nice little sentence that says write-in candidate. Well, you've got to write in that name. You've got to write in Konrad Wert, Konradwert. We've been thinking about little jingles like Mickey Mouse, Konradwert. Any way to really drive that message of who we are and what my name is when elections come. The premise of this campaign is to reach out to volunteers, to reach out to folks that feel that we do need change in the county commissioner position, Precinct 1, from backyard, socially distanced and masked as needed if we can't appropriately socially distance, and share our convictions, to share our platform of full-time effort, of being very transparent, of building community and locally focused on our needs and being proactive with our actions. And I am privy to streaming, so many times I go on our social media platforms. Vote Konrad Wert is our Facebook page. www.votekonradwert is our .com is our website, and communicate with constituents and voters in that regard. We're also, of course, going to be looking at outlets such as Kerrville United and other media sources here in Kerrville to spread this message. And this message really is about collaboration and active listening. And that seems simple, but my goodness, that needs to be a foundation for our elected officials. Collaboration and active listening. And if you're not familiar with the word active listening, all it means is that you're very much tuned in to what is going around you locally. For whatever reason, my opponent loves to take on the national strife, loves to take on the national divisiveness. I don't know why. I don't know him that well in terms of understanding the reasoning behind that. But what comes across then, Aaron, is this continual divide, this continual separation, and that has no place in a small area such as Kerr County. If we can't rely on one another's empathy and we can't rely on one another's community effort, oh my goodness gracious, small communities such as ours just build more tension and conflict. And that's not the path for Kerr County. That's not the path for my precinct. And that's not the path I want to teach my children. So, yeah.
So a lot of folks will wonder, you talked about the county commissioners being paid a full-time salary, not necessarily always working a full-time job. You as an educator now, what are your plans if you win the race? How will you handle that? What would be your plan to attack that position in Precinct 1 if you were to win?
Sure.
Would you still work? Would you still work as a teacher? Would you take the position as a full-time position? Is I guess what I'm asking.
Yes, I would take the position I would take the commissioner's role as a full-time position. I was proactive with my administration. We wanted to ensure that no one was thrown for a loop. And said and granted, let's be real, this is a long shot, Aaron. Some would say, even on our team, to say, oh, goodness gracious, write-in candidacy. It's daunting. It's daunting because we're a new face and a new name. I understand that. However, if elected, by all means, it's a full-time position. If the expectation is the number that we threw out, $62,000 a year, my goodness gracious, that is a full-time position. And if we're defeated, then of course we'll continue with our passions in education. We'll continue with our convictions in reaching young people. I think it needs to be noted that the reality is, yes, we could very well lose. It is very difficult to win a campaign on a write-in ballot. To hope that 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000 votes, that means 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000 people are remembering KONRADWERT, writing it in on the ballot beside, oh yes, Precinct 1. But the point is larger than that. And it really is. The point is about accountability. The point is about the discussion that as constituents, we need to say the bar must be raised. The bar must be raised on how we are represented in Precinct 1. The bar must be raised on how are we heard and respected. That seems like a simple word, but that is vital for an elected official, because the purpose of the elected official is to represent the constituent. That is the job. That is the job that we empower them to do. And even broader is to say that in Kerr County, we don't, at least in my experiences, we don't accept language of racist remarks and racial epithets and divisive language that is there only to incite. I don't see that in our parks. I don't see that at the HEB. I don't see that in my school. I don't see that when I go out for parades. I don't see that in local forums of people gathering. It should not exist in a platform in which a county commissioner is holding. It should not. And that's the real message here. We're rising up to hold some accountability to our county commissioner, Harley Blue. And that's why we're running.
And then last question, the reason that we're interviewing you like this, we're socially distant. I'm at my house, you're at your house, is, of course,
Right.
because of the pandemic. The Commissioner's Court, we made a video criticizing them for some of their responses to some of the health officials and health emergency management coordinator that had information to give to the Commissioner's Court that they more or less dismissed. Do you have criticisms or any kind of comments about their handling of the pandemic and what our elected officials should do during this time?
Sure, and I love that question. It's troubling when we ridicule the science. I understand differing opinions. I understand where some people feel that by all means we must wear the mask. We must wear the mask. That's what we do in my family. Our boys both have asthma. We ensure that we're doing whatever we can based on the science that's provided to us to remain safe. And out of respect to my neighbors, my fellow residents here in Precinct 1, I feel I'm obliged to do that because I care about their well-being. I don't know if they have an immune deficiency. I don't know if they're asthmatic or ill, so I'm going to wear my mask. That's what I feel called to do. Where I struggle with our opponent is he likes to ridicule. He enjoys making a mockery of what feels like steps to be preventative. And once again, Aaron, I'm a school teacher, so I go by the data, and I have to look at the international community. And when I look at the international community and the way they've tackled this pandemic and the way, let's just make it very micro, the way we have a county commissioner mocking those steps of safety, mocking the severity rather of how this is affecting our country and our specific community. That's troubling. Once again, you can disagree, but by making jokes and by mocking that while people truly are struggling and dying and getting sick, whatever those numbers, if you look at those numbers being very insignificant, but when we look at the broad, hundreds of thousands at this point, getting closer and closer to 200,000 here in the United States, it's no place to make a joke. There's no place for mocking that. It's a responsibility that an elected official has to sit and truly understand without that bias. It's the responsibility of the elected official to actively listen to best understand how to provide services for his precinct. Yeah.
Well, thanks for being with us, Konrad. I want to give you just a chance to address the voters directly now and just tell them, what you would like to, their help with or just kind of your closing message and where they can find out more information about your candidacy.
Aaron, thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Kerrville United. Friends, my name is Konrad Wert, Konradwert. I'm a school teacher and I'm a father. I like to play the fiddle. And we are here to do our best to represent this precinct. We are here to actively listen. We are here to be objective. We are here to be proactive and to meeting the needs here in our precinct. We are here to work full-time for you when the expectation is that high based on the allocated budget of the county. The way you can support us is by going on www.votekonradwert.com. You'll see sign-up sheets for volunteering. You'll see sign-up sheets for fundraising. And I think the biggest piece is start to have this conversation with your friends and your family and understand that we are the ones that put elected officials in office, and we are the ones that have to hold them accountable when we don't agree with what we're hearing on the airways. We very much need your support. We very much want to build a relationship in this regard of improving Precinct 1 and caring for our county.
Well, thanks again for being here, Konrad. We really appreciate your time and willingness to come and be introduced to the voters here and the viewers here at Kerrville United. So,
thank you. Thank you, Aaron. Good to see you.
Thank you. Want to close out tonight just with some difficult news that we have to share. Those of you that were with us on Sunday on the live stream know that we had a benefit concert for 8-year-old Ariana Lopez, who was struck by a drunk driver while sleeping in her bed, and she suffered massive injuries. Unfortunately, the news we have to share is that Ariana's mother posted on Facebook today that her little girl had passed away, saying, I truly thank, these are her words, I truly thank everyone for all the prayers she received. She fought her absolute hardest, but her little body was just too tired to carry on. My heart is absolutely destroyed. My guest that was here tonight, Konrad Wert, was one of the musicians who graciously gave of their time and talent to help raise money for her family's expenses related to this tragedy. We thank everyone who assisted us with that effort to alleviate just a little bit of the struggle by donating so generously. But tonight our hearts go out to Ariana's family and friends, and our prayers are with them as they navigate these unthinkable circumstances. So as we close tonight, we'll honor 8-year-old Ariana Lopez.